Trump's reckless trade war is tanking the American economy in real time, and we are starting to see pushback even among Republicans. A Senate bipartisan bill was just introduced in order to limit the president's ability to impose tariffs without congressional approval. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down. So specifically, this bill is being introduced by Chuck Grassley and Senator Cantwell, and the bill is called the Trade Review Act of 2025. It is modeled after the War Resolution Act of 1973. Now, that War Resolution Act of 1973 came about during the public dispute around Vietnam and specifically around Nixon's actions with Cambodia, which had happened in 1970. That act specifically said that the president had to notify Congress within 48 hours of sending in troops into conflict, and then Congress had 60 days to approve that action. And if they didn't, then the president could no longer continue to send in those military troops. The language of this Trade Review Act is very similar, and that specifically it says that the president has to explain its reasoning and impacts of any tariffs it imposes to Congress within 48 hours of imposing the tariff, and that the tariffs would expire after 60 days if Congress doesn't approve those tariffs. Basically, it's a huge check on what Trump is doing right now. Trump is acting like the tariffs are some sort of game, and he's imposing them in some ways most stringently against our allies in the European Union and Canada. And this is having major consequences, not only on our stock market, but as we are going to see in American jobs. And we see even this Republican Grassley, both Grassley and Cantwell are both on the Finance Committee, the Senate Finance Committee. So they are well aware of the implications that Trump is having on the economy with these tariffs. And so they're trying to take back control from the president, because obviously he is not equipped to handle something as serious as imposing tariffs by himself, as he has been evident with either imposing the tariffs, taking away the tariffs, doubling down on the tariffs. In these last few months, his chaotic nature alone has impacted the stock market. And then with his latest announcement on Liberation Day, it has certainly affected the economy and the stock market. And so we have this Senate bipartisan bill being introduced. Now, even if not many or enough senators, we will certainly probably have enough senators to pass the bill because the Democrats will be able to pass it. This bill, even with Senator Grassley on board, may have more Republicans on board with passing it. But even if not, even if it doesn't go anywhere beyond, the Senate, you now have all those senators on record of whether or not they agree with this trade war that Trump is starting. And if the House doesn't take it up even, you now have a question that you can ask every Republican House member when it comes to the midterms of what they thought about this bipartisan bill. Because these tariff wars are going to be politically awful. Because we are already seeing the consequence. And every time tariffs have been imposed throughout history, even when President McKinley imposed those tariffs, Trump's idol for some reason, there was huge political ramifications from that. So this bill puts a vote that every Republican must make. Do they agree with it or don't they agree with it? And then they're going to have to show up to their constituents and explain why they were okay with letting somebody like Trump, who is treating their livelihood, their economic livelihood, like a game. We all see it in real time. This bill allows that conversation to happen. Clearly, Congress needs to reaffirm its power to tariff because Trump is clearly reckless. We see the stock market tanking. And the reason the data that the economists and traders are seeing are being reported in places like the New York Times. The New York Times is saying that Trump's tariffs will cost importers $714 billion to import everyday American goods. These costs will certainly be passed on to the American consumer. This is why we see the stock market tanking. In fact, if the importers imported the same goods they did in 2024 this year under Trump's tariffs, it will cost them 10 times to import those same goods. This is the data that traders are seeing. This is why our stock market is tanking. Not only is Trump reckless because of the high tariffs he's imposing, he's also reckless in how and with who he's imposing it against. We see him imposing it against our allies, Canada, the European Union. We see him not imposing it against countries like Russia. And then we see some of the highest tariffs being imposed against countries that are no threat to us, are certainly not going to impact our economy as much as Trump's tariffs are now going to devastate their economy. And many of these countries have just had U.S. aid withheld from them. So at the same time as they are grappling with no longer receiving very necessary aid through U.S. aid, they now are facing the highest tariffs, which seems to me just a measure of cruelty. So let's point out those countries. Vietnam has now their new tariffs are 46%, Cambodia 49%, Nicaragua 19%, Guinea 38%, Taiwan 32%, Thailand 37%, Malaysia 24%, South Korea 26%, and Switzerland 32%. Again, countries that we do not really see as some sort of threat to us economically. China is not on that list, and it seemed like that was all we heard for Trump on the campaign trail. But instead, it's some more vulnerable countries. For example, Trump imposed a 50% tariff, one of its highest tariffs, on the small African country Lesotho, because evidently they are such a threat to us. But this tariff imposition is supposed to devastate its country economically. These are the kind of thoughtless tariffs that he imposed, like as if it were a game to the American economy, a game to the countries it imposes. For whatever reason, deciding that years and years of our trade alliances mean nothing. So thankfully, we have a Senate bipartisan bill being introduced to push back and to get other Republicans to either step up and protect the American people or get voted out.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.